Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just jump right in. Be honest, when you hear the words clinical trial audit, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of site teams, it's a total panic attack, right? A frantic, last-minute cram session. Late nights, endless coffee, and just desperately trying to organize months of paperwork in a single weekend. But what if I told you that true audit readiness has absolutely nothing to do with that last-minute scramble? Today we're exploring how to prepare your site by treating audit readiness not as an event, but as a proactive 365-day lifestyle.
So here's our roadmap for today, what I like to call the preparation pyramid. We're going to cover 4 things. First, the 365-day culture. Second, the mock audit investment. Third, the 4-part ISF checklist. And finally, putting together the audit-ready room. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, the 365-day culture.
Look, the absolute secret sauce here is that real quality management isn't something you just magically assemble when a sponsor announces a visit. It's built into your daily habits. It sounds intimidating, sure, but it's totally manageable when you break it down into a simple timeline. On a daily basis, it's all about real-time data. You've got to enter that data into the EDC right at the visit, or at least the same working day. No "I'll do it later" excuses. Weekly, your principal investigator needs to be reviewing and signing off on that deviation log, and you're knocking out any outstanding CRA queries. Moving to monthly, you're checking your delegation log, making sure everyone is listed with the right dates, and checking that consent forms are current. Quarterly, you're doing mini audits on 3 random participant files and developing corrective and preventative actions, or CAPAs, for any hiccups. Biannually, that's your big investigator site file review and drug accountability check. And finally, annually, you run a full internal mock audit and update your trial SOPs. See how those tiny daily and weekly habits just naturally stack up? They build this wide, rock-solid base for your preparation pyramid. It really is brilliant.
Moving right along to Section 2, the mock audit investment.
So as we move up our preparation pyramid, it's time for a macro stress test. What is a mock audit exactly? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like, an internal simulation of the real deal. You literally grab the exact same checklists and rubrics that an external auditor would use. The logic here is so simple. If you wouldn't want a sponsor to see a gap in your paperwork, you need to find it yourself first. You'll want to run these at least quarterly, or absolutely mandatory about 4 to 6 weeks before you expect a real audit. Oh, and here's a massive pro tip. Delegate this to a senior coordinator who is not actively working on the trial. Seriously, you desperately need a fresh, objective pair of eyes.
To put that into perspective, listen to this quote from a site manager at a Phase 2 oncology site in Munich. They said, "Without the mock audit program, those 8 records would have been a major finding, or worse. I mean, talk about a real-world near miss."
Let's actually break down how that played out, because it's a perfect example. 3 months before their planned sponsor audit, this Munich site ran a Q3 mock audit. And thank goodness they did, because their internal reviewer found that drug dispensing records were missing a witnessed by co-signature, not just once, but on 8 different occasions across 3 months. Because they caught it themselves, they were able to play detective. They traced the root cause back to a really flawed new dispensing log template they'd rolled out in Q2. It literally just left off the co-signature field. So they fixed the template, went back and retrospectively co-signed all 8 entries with explanatory addenda, updated their SOP to make sure template changes always get a mandatory QC review, and retrained the whole staff. The payoff? When the actual auditor showed up, they walked away with a satisfactory rating. Catching your own mistakes before the sponsor does is a total game changer.
All right, Section 3, the 4-part ISF checklist.
Now we are getting to the real core of the pyramid, the paperwork. When an auditor cracks open your binders, this 4-part checklist is exactly what they are hunting for. Part 1 is regulatory and ethics. The bureaucratic joy of foundational legal paperwork. An auditor expects every single document here to be perfectly chronologized, no exceptions. We're talking signed protocols and all their amendments. You need those IRB or HEC approval letters filed right up against their relevant amendments. You absolutely must have approval letters for every single version of the informed consent form. Plus, they're looking for regulatory authority approvals, annual safety reports, sponsor contracts, and proof that your insurance and indemnity documentation is totally current. The whole point here is proving your trial had the legal and ethical green light at every single step. Pivoting over to Part 2, participant documents. The auditor is going to be incredibly nitpicky about exact dating here. The golden rule you can never forget:
Signed consent forms, or ICFs, absolutely must be dated prior to the very first study procedure. No way around it. You'll also need PI co-signatures on those forms if the protocol mandates it. And your tracking logs? They are non-negotiable. They prove you're keeping patients safe over time. So your reconsent tracking log has to be flawless and perfectly match the IRB amendment dates. They are also going to verify that your access-controlled ID code list is kept totally secure and separate from the data, and they'll be scrutinizing your screening and enrollment logs, right down to the withdrawal and loss-to-follow-up docs.
Moving to Part 3, this is all about the human element: staff, training, and site qualifications. An auditor needs hard proof that everybody on the team is currently qualified and officially delegated. The delegation log is the star of the show here. And listen, here is a massive trap a lot of sites fall into. The principal investigator must have personally signed and dated that log. A quick little initial just doesn't cut it. You also need current, signed CVs for every single person listed. GCP training certificates usually need to be within the last 2 years. They'll verify protocol-specific training, check medical licenses, and do not forget the lab. You need current lab accreditation certificates and normal reference ranges that perfectly match those accreditation dates.
Rounding out our big checklist is Part 4, Data, Safety, and Monitoring. Believe me, auditors are aggressively hunting for unresolved issues in this section. They want to see a flawless drug accountability log, literally from the minute you received it to its final destruction. They'll be checking continuous temperature monitoring logs for all your drug storage areas, and checking for quarantine records if the temperature ever spiked or dropped. Protocol deviations, those need to be logged with a CAPA within 5 working days. They will also comb through your SAE reports, your monitoring visit reports, and here's a big one, escalated EDC queries. If you have queries just sitting there unanswered for more than 14 days, the auditor is 100% going to flag it.
And finally, Section 4, the audit-ready room.
Okay, so we've got the daily habits down, we ran the mock audits, our paperwork is pristine. Now we're at the very peak of our pyramid, the physical environment itself. You want to set up in a quiet, private room completely separate from your clinical areas. Have a prepared ISF document index right there on the table for them. Make sure you have a tested laptop with EDC access already logged in and the Wi-Fi password written down. And I love this pro tip, something so many sites miss: designate a document runner. This is someone whose only job is to go fetch documents when the auditor asks for them. By keeping this person separate from the PI and the coordinator, your key staff can sit there, stay totally calm, and just focus on answering the auditor's questions instead of frantically sprinting down the hallway every 5 minutes. You really have to think about what your room is communicating non-verbally. A perfectly organized room tells an auditor, before they even crack open a single binder, that quality is just part of your everyday culture, right? It doesn't look like a frantic cover-up. Think about the contrast here. A true quality culture looks like indexed binders in section order, a calm PI ready to welcome the auditor, a spotless space, and tech fully working by 8:30 a.m. On the flip side, what screams "we have problems"? Staff anxiously whispering in the hallways, binders getting frantically shuffled around during the opening meeting, documents printing on the fly because they weren't pre-prepared, or a PI who is suddenly, mysteriously unavailable for the first 2 hours. Trust me, the auditor's impression is completely locked in during those first 5 minutes. So that leaves us with a pretty vital question as we wrap up this explainer. Look around your site right now. Honestly, if an auditor walked through your front door today, what story would your room tell them? Would it scream frantic scramble? Or would it project a calm, 365-day culture of audit readiness? Take these strategies, go run that mock audit, and make absolutely sure you're telling the right story. Thanks so much for joining me today. Keep learning and keep building that culture of quality.